Pandas is very fun and very useful when you know what you're doing. So let's look into some Pandas fundamentals and also some common functions that you're going to definitely need in 20 minutes. If this is your first time here, welcome. I am Musra. I teach data science on YouTube in an approachable and easy to understand way. And after you watch this video, you can go grab my free Pandas cheat sheet. I will be leaving the link in the description. In that cheat sheet, you will have all this information and more in a written format. Alright, let's get started. I will be showing you everything on a Jupyter notebook because it's very easy to display things here. The first thing that we need to know is how to install Pandas, and that is like this. Install Pandas. If you already have Python installed on your computer, it's very likely that you also have pip. In the terminal, you only need to write this bit without the exclamation point, but if you're using it on a Jupyter notebook, you need to use the exclamation point. I already have it installed, so it tells me that it is already installed. How I import it is basically by saying import pandas, as simple as that, but I don't want to write pandas every time I want to use the pandas library, so I can create a shortcut for it, and now every time I say pd, it understands that I mean pandas. The next thing that I want to do is import a dataset because, that's what we're going to work on. I will be showing you things on the Titanic dataset, the very classic, the amount of people who were in Titanic and their names, their age, who survived, who didn't. Let me show you how to read a dataset in Pandas, and it's as simple as read CSV, and then I give it the name and the path to the dataset, and it reads me the dataset. So it's very simple like that. You can also read it from Excel, for example, and if you want to write a dataset that you already have, then what you need to do is write the name of the data frame and then say to CSV, and then give it a file name, for example. Then it will write something that you already have in your program into a CSV. Same, by the way, you can use with Excel, for example. Read Excel to Excel. There might be some tweaks and some settings that you need to do there, but it's not very common to read from Excel anyways. So let's see. I will write this to a Titanic variable. I'm not really good with that word. All right, so now this information is in the dataset called Titanic. Or the data frame, or the variable, let's say. And in Pandas, this is like the most fundamental thing that you need to know. There are two separate object types that are very useful. So the first one we have is a data frame. A data frame is basically this whole thing. This whole thing is called a data frame. And in Python, we can see the types of things using this. Like, for example, if I say, what is the type of this number? It will tell me that it's an integer. What is the type of, my name? It's a string. And if I ask it, what is the type of this variable? It will tell me that it is a Pandas data frame. So this is how you get a data frame in Pandas. And the second one is a series object. And what is a series object, if you ask, is basically like one of these columns. So a data frame is a combination of series objects. Let's see, how can I get a series object? Let's say I want to get the names of people. This is a series object. And then if I, ask for the type of it, it says it's a Pandas series. Okay, so how can we extract some parts of this data frame that we want? One way, as I showed you here, if you want just one column, then you can write it like this and you can get it. This returns a series object. One other way to do is if you want to get multiple columns, then you can call multiple columns like this, but this will return a data frame object. So that's the difference between these two. If you want to get rows, there are multiple ways of doing that, but one just very straightforward way is to give the location of a certain row, and then it will give you that information. So this is the fourth row, or the row that has the number 4. Then you can see, okay, Mr. William Henry Allen, is that correct? Yes, that is the one that I got. So this is not very useful. I don't ever use this actually, like giving this, trying to get the rows by number. So not very important. One very important thing, though, is filtering of the dataset. So basically, it is getting some information out of the dataset or the data frame using some sort of criteria. how that works is actually pretty simple, but it sometimes is a bit confusing when people start using pandas at first. So you need two things, what I call the shell and the condition. These are not official names, I came up with those. So the shell is basically you are writing the name of the data frame and just two brackets. And inside you need to write the condition, and how the condition is framed is a little bit different every time. But basically, let's say, okay, what do I want to do? Here is a data frame. I want to get people who are older than 30, right? So what do I need to do is I say Titanic age needs to be older than 30. And then it will give me everyone who is older than 30. You can change this to make it younger than 30, etc., etc. But this is basically how it works. You just need the condition inside and the shell. So what does a condition look like if you don't have the shell? Basically like this. It just gives you a series object that corresponds to, like, that is filled with true or false, that corresponds to the condition holding for a specific row. So if I run this again here in the shell, as you can see, then, it says like the 0th row, the condition was false, so it doesn't include it here. The first one is true, and then it includes it here. The second one is not there, etc., etc. So that's how it goes. There are multiple ways how you can use conditions. One other way is by combining them. So for example, I can say I want the people who are older than 30 who also paid a fare of less than 50, and it will give me, but this is the and thing, symbol. You can also change it to or, that's depending on what you want to get. And one important point here is that you have to use parentheses to put the conditions in this case, if you're combining more than one condition. One other thing you can do, it doesn't only have to be comparing integers. For example, you can say, I want to get everything where the class of the cabin, I guess that is, needs to be either 1 or 3. So that's one thing you can do. Or you can negate these conditions. You can, if you put a tilde here, then you say, actually, I want all the people who stayed in classes that are not 1 or 3. But if you have something like this, Titanic, where let's say I want the people who are of age 30, right? Then this will give you the people who are age 30. But if you want anyone who is not age 30, then you do not need to use a tilde. You just need to use this. You probably remember this from the Python courses. This means does not equal to 30. Now that's another way of using the conditions. Okay, let's look into how we can change the data frame as we want it. So the first thing that I want to look at is adding a new column. So I have an example here that I want to show you. Basically, when you want to add a new column by calculating something using the other columns, it's very straightforward. You can use it like you're adding or subtracting something. So let's say I want to calculate how much a family paid totally for this Titanic trip. So I can say number of siblings or spouses aboard, number of parents and children aboard. I just sum these numbers, and one person, who this row is for, times the fare that they paid. So then I can get the fare paid by the family. So when I do this, now, as you see, I have a whole new column showing me the total fare paid by this family. What else can I do? So if I want to change the name of the columns, one thing you can do is basically give a list of names or assign a list of names to Titanic.columns. But this is a little bit hard way. This is useful if you want to change all the column names, but if you only want to change one column name, what you instead need to do is this. Rename. So basically you say Titanic rename, you give it the columns, but in a dictionary now, and you say the column that is called fare now needs to be called ticket fee, and the column that is called survived is just going to be a smiley face because we're happy that they survived. So let me show you what it looks like. Then, as you see, the fare now says ticket fee and survived now says a smiling face. Let's see. Okay, so we can also reset the index, but to show you how that affects, I also want to first do a filtering. So, okay, let's say I'm saying filtered Titanic. filter Titanic. I want to see it. So, okay, as you can see now, or maybe I should do 30, it's more, yeah. Okay, so we only get the people who are aged 30, but now our index looks a little bit off, right? So it's not starting from 0 anymore. So if you want to reset this index, you can just say reset index, and then it will reset the index. As neat as that. But as you can see, it creates a new column for the old index, so you don't lose that information. Most of the time you don't need that information actually, so you can just say drop true. So it just drops that index. And now, yeah, I have my original data set, but the index is shown properly. So when you need this is basically if you want to plot things directly, then sometimes the plotting use the index. And if the numbers are like all over the place, it will show you a very funny plot. So you might need a neat index here. The next thing that I want to show you is sorting the values. So we have the Titanic data set. Let's remember it quickly. And what I can do is I can say sort values by, what do we sort it by? Let's say we sort it by fair. And yeah, it sorts by fair. And if you don't want it to have it ascending, then you can say ascending is false, and you get it like that. So basically what I'm trying to show you here is depending on the object that you're using, there are a lot of functions that you can use in Pandas. Some of these functions are applied to data frames. Some of these functions apply to series. We'll also see an example of that soon. And basically you just need, and sometimes both, by the way. So you just need to know how to use them. And when you want to understand how to use them, you just need to go and Google it and see what are the options, you know. So like if I wanted to sort this and I'm like, oh, okay, but this is ascending, how I don't want to have it ascending, then I can Google it and see, okay, sort values function has an option to set ascending to false, then I will be getting in descending order. You can also use the strings in your data frame to change your data frame a little bit. So for example, let's say I want to standardize the names. So that's why I want all the names to be in lowercase, total lowercase. So what I can do for that is I'm just saying this is to acknowledge that it's a string. I'm saying use the string function to lowercase all the names. So it gives me a series object that, and again, as you can see, I use this function on a series object, and it returns me a series object where all the names are lowercase. But if I print the Titanic data frame again, it is not applied here yet, as you can see. So this is because I haven't done anything to assign this new created series object to my data frame yet. So what I can do is I can say Titanic name is now equal to this. And now we can change the difference. If you want to keep the original, you can also assign it to a different name, like, you know, name lowercase, and then it will create a new column for that and put it there so that you can keep the original. So this is one way of changing things. If you want to keep using, if you want to do other things with strings, it's possible. There are a lot of possibilities. One other example is, for example, I want to see if they were in a reverence. You know, it says, for example, this guy was a reverend, right? And yeah, I want to see which people were like that. So I can use that, which people were reverent for like that. Which people were reverent. So I can again use this as a condition inside the shell. And it will give me all the people who were reverent. But of course, we're looking for strings here, so it might also catch people who have this like rev in there that doesn't actually match what we're looking for, you know, because we're looking for the title, but these are different problems. So this is one way of looking or filtering with strings. How else can I change my data frame? We can also combine a bunch of data frames together to get a whole new data frame. So let me show you how to do that. Okay, first I want to read my Titanic data frame again, just to, you know, reset it because we've changed some bits. So this is what the Titanic data set looks like. And let's say I want to, you know, we figured out there are 2 new people who actually survived the Titanic event, and we want to add them there. So what I can do is basically, let's say I realize there's this woman called Miss Rose Dewitt Cutter and Jack Dawson. One of them is female, the other one is male, and she survived, but then she said he didn't survive. We do not have them yet in our database, and we want to add them. So we can create a data frame for them. Let's say this is the addition that we want to add to the end of this, end of the data frame that we already have. So what I need to do there is basically just say, hey pandas, I want to concatenate 2 data frames. The first one is called Titanic, the other one is called Addendum. So give me the combined version, and then it gives me the combined version. Again, as you can see, it displays because we haven't assigned it to a variable or a name of a data frame, so you can do that. And you might also do some reset index, so there are no problems with duplicate indexes here. Another information we might want to add is basically merging. So by joining, if you ever worked with data frames or databases, you might know what this means. So let's say we've gotten some extra information since the event happened. Now we know for each class how many cabins there are. And we want to have this in our data frame for some analysis reasons. So we want to see, okay, Mr. Owen Harris Brown was in class 3, and how many other people or how many other cabins were there. We want to be able to see that. So how I'm going to do this is actually pretty simple. I'm just going to say Titanic merge. So into the Titanic data frame, I want to merge the extra information. I want to merge it in left. I will make a separate video about generally merging concatenation, so we'll go into more depth there. So now I'm trying to give you a little bit of a faster way of how to do all of these things. So if you want to learn more about that, go check out that video too. And on is basically asking me, okay, what am I going to match them with? So we want to match them on the class. So I say p class. And then it gives me a merged version. So now for every person, I can see in their own class how many other cabins were there. So this is how to merge them. And the last thing that we're going to see are aggregations. Okay, the first one, describe, is basically a way for me to get a lot of stats on my data frame. So if I say Titanic describe, it says, okay, there are 887 values for this column. The mean is 0.4-ish, and standard deviation is this, minimum value is this, maximum value of this, and all the percentiles basically. Then, you know, for age, this could be very useful information, but this is basically how you can get some stats. You can also get stats in a very simple way like this. Or if you want to get it on a specific column, you can just choose the column and then say, give me the mean. That's, yeah, very simple. But as you can see, it only calculates these values on float and integers and not on strings automatically. So, I mean, that makes sense. One other thing that I use all the time is value counts. So, Titanic, I want to count how many times a unique value occurs in a column. So, for example, I want to see the age groups and how many people there are in each group. So I would say age value counts, and it says there are 39 people who are age 22, 37 people who are age 28, 36 people who are age 18, etc., etc. So this is very useful when you want to see the general distribution of how many people there are. So this is a very useful way to also kind of use while you're doing data exploration and data cleaning to see if there's anything wrong with your data. And the last one is group by. I will again make a separate video on group by and go into details of how everything works, but just to show you what it does. So group by basically groups things together. So you know how I said, okay, give me all the counts of age groups? Then I can say group it by sex, for example. Group everyone who is male and female, and then you can decide what to do with the other values. So, for example, let's do this. Titanic, group by, and I give it here, group by sex. Okay, at first it doesn't give me anything. It gives me, this is like a special object that is group by. And on top of that, let's say I want to say, okay, give me the mean age per each group, age group. And it says, okay, for females, the mean is 27. For males, well, 28-ish. For males, it's like 30.5, right? So this is very useful. You can also get the counts, I think. Oops. Yeah, how many females and how many males there are. So, I mean, yeah, age doesn't really apply here anymore. So this is a very useful function, but this is kind of more of an advanced thing. So yeah, we'll get into it a little bit later. Okay, the last thing I want to show you is plotting. So it's very simple in Pandas to plot things. It's not the most beautiful looking one. It's kind of, you know, the built-in functions, and you need to kind of work through it a little bit to make it look the way that you want. But just to give you some tips quickly of how you can start using it, and then you can explore it more yourself and see how you can make the beautiful and meaningful plots that you need. So it's very simply, you can, even if you just say titanic.plot, it will create you a plot. So, you know, but this doesn't really mean anything. This is the index, and for each index, different colors of lines shows me different column values. But yeah, you know, I don't really understand anything from this. Instead, you can also just grab one column and then say plot, okay, just like this. You know, then it will give you only one of the values. Again, this is the index. But if I want to put something else on the x-axis, then I can also do that. So I can say Titanic. Let's say I only want to get age and whether someone survived or not. That information, right? So this is what the data frame will look like at that point. And I can say plot, x value should be age, y value should be whether someone survived or not. And yeah, let's see what it looks like. Okay, this looks very confusing. Instead, what I can do is I can say I actually want to see it in a scatter plot way. And I also, you know, have the option to make the figure size a little bit bigger. Let's say this. Yeah, okay, now I can see for each age, you know, different data points of people who survived or not. But ideally, you would want to make some sort of aggregated stats out of this and then plot it. So, you know, do not take this very seriously. I'm just trying to show you like how things work with plotting. One thing though that I always find very useful is histograms. So I can just say Titanic histogram, and let's make it bigger. And it will give me the distribution or histograms of values. So this is very useful when you want to see if there is anything wrong. Like for example, you see age, and then if you see that there are some age values in 120, you know that likely there weren't anyone who was 120. Like if you want to go more detailed, you can also make the bins 100. It just gives you more granular information. Or, you know, like if you can easily detect outliers or problems with your data when you're using histogram. So that's like one awesome way of using plotting. But if you want to, you know, use plotting or visualizations for presentation purposes, you probably should go with other libraries anyways, like Plotly, for example. They make much nicer looking plots in that sense. So Matplotlib, which is the built-in one here, is not the most beautiful one and not the easiest to work with. So yeah, this is how you do plotting on Pandas. Hey, thanks for watching, and I hope you liked this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a like and even subscribe maybe, because then I know that you're interested. I can make more of this content in the future. Don't forget to also grab your free Pandas cheat sheet. The link is in the description. Have a nice day, and I'll see you around.